Hello there, friends. Welcome back. You know, if you've ever spent much time in libraries, particularly public libraries, you will know that generally they have a room called the reference room. The reference room is usually devoid of people. Most people probably think it's the least interesting room in the library. The reference room is usually the room filled with genealogical documents and maps and publications related to the local, state, or county or city governments. Basically, it's a room full of material that they don't let you check out and take home. One thing you will usually find in a reference room is a shelf dedicated to yearbooks from the local high schools and universities. If you're not familiar, a yearbook is a book generally published by a yearbook club in a high school or college that has pictures of the students, and it's a record of all of the achievements and activities of the school for that year, and it's intended to be a keepsake that you can buy at the end of the year. At least that's what it is in the United States. And whenever I'm in a reference room, that's not often, but whenever I'm there, I find myself drawn to the old yearbooks, and I'll pull an old one off the shelf and I'll flip through it and look at the faces, and I find myself wondering, how much of their experience, their high school experience, for example, was the same as mine. My high school experience wasn't amazing by any means. Perhaps we would all say that about our high school experiences, but I find myself looking at old yearbooks and wondering how much of that experience is universal. You take young people, put them in a shared setting. People are getting to know each other. People are trying to fit in. People want to be liked. You often don't have control over whether you are liked or disliked, and that can lead to struggles and frustrations. It's all about growing up. It's all about figuring out things, right? And I wonder how much of that experience is the same for every generation of young people, and how much of that experience might depend on the generation or the decade or even the century that you're born in. And I thought that experience of flipping through an old yearbook in a reference section of a library might translate very nicely to a page-turning video for you guys. So we'll try that today. I found myself drawn to the thought of a century, of 100 years. I wondered how different or similar would the high school experience have been for someone born a century ago. If we looked at those pages and looked at those faces, would we see ourselves? How much of that would be familiar to our modern eyes and sensibilities? And how much would be alien? And if we assume that generally kids are 18 years old when they graduate high school, then kids who were born 100 years ago in 1917 would have graduated high school in the year 1935. And so I turned to eBay, and for a very small sum had this yearbook mailed to me. This is the 1935 yearbook from Jordan High School, Johhi, Johhi, Jordan High School in Los Angeles, California. You can probably hear the texture in this front cover. It's a very bumpy material, and it's got this kind of embossed relief bit of art here at the top with a book and the sun. I'm sorry, not the sun. The illumination from the light burning in the lamp of knowledge here. I thought we could flip through this 1935 yearbook together and see what we see. We will, of course, be particularly interested in the various greetings and inscriptions that would be written by hand. That was always a big deal for for my generation, in the United States anyway, getting your yearbook signed by all your friends. So, and we'll be moving this around a bit as well, since it doesn't lay very flat. It turns out that 1935 was the 300th anniversary of the establishment of secondary education in America, so they make a big deal about that here. And we start off right away with some writings. You may be a pal of mine, but I'm signing the cover. Looks like somebody named Dave, perhaps. And it says W36. The graduating classes back then were split into half years. There was the winter class and the summer class. So the person who wrote this would have been graduating with the winter class of 1936. This book has a combination of very slick, glossy pages, like the one on the right here, and then these much rougher, more matte finish pages that look like they might have been green or a light green at one time. And these pages are used as the section dividers. Ex libris. I believe that means from the library of. It's like a rubber stamp that's been stamped on this page, but there's no name to indicate whose library it belonged to. And we have a dedication here at the beginning to this woman. It says, as a token of our sincere gratitude for your encouragement, your assistance, and your constant inspiration to all Jordan, we, the class of Summer 35, dedicate our Johai to you, Miss Helen M. Darcy. Miss Darcy was on the faculty, and she wrote in the book right here, and she says, best regards to a fine student body president and a fine boy, Helen Darcy. So we get our first hint about who was the original owner of this yearbook. Our table of contents. A foreword and a page letting us know that it was published by the summer class of 1935, Jordan High School, and printed by the printing classes, June 1935. And there's a great piece of artwork here that looks like it could have been like a woodcut or some sort of print in that style. And this is the style of art that we see throughout the book. There's a couple of pictures here that are very interesting. There's a picture here called Temporary Quarters. And it seems to indicate that for some reason, which we will discover later, that part of the academic activities of this high school were being conducted from temporary tent-like structures. And we see here a picture with the caption, Reconstruction of Main Building. Why would the main building need to be reconstructed? So we haven't even gotten to the student body yet, and this old yearbook is already presenting us with mysteries. The faculty. A piece of artwork called The Little Red Schoolhouse. Although, I suppose the choice of the color red there is the artist's prerogative, isn't it? Since the schoolhouse could be any color. Just a friend from Jordan High. A person with the first name Stanislavs signed this. To a swell S.B. Prez. Swell. Great use of the word swell. We see that this school had a principal, as well as a girls' vice principal and a boys' vice principal. And the girls' vice principal is Helen Darcy, who we saw a few pages ago. And here we have the faculty, including a few signatures sprinkled around. We have an English department, commercial and office, language and science, music and art. Looks like the music and art department was the smallest. Mathematics, social studies, practical arts, and physical education. Interesting that this gentleman was captured looking at the ground. It's so funny when we think about photographs today And we know instantly from our display whether the picture was good or not, and we can retake it 100 times. I wonder if they didn't know that this person was looking at the ground until they developed the film. And then it was like, whoop, too late now. Classes. Best wishes from Pauline. Good luck from Sylvia. Best of luck. Lots of luck. One thing I noticed in this yearbook was that, generally speaking, kids were a lot more brief in the things they wrote. In my senior yearbook, there are rambling paragraphs from people who just wanted to write about who knows what, waxing philosophical about their last days of high school. But these folks kept it pretty terse. And here we have it. The first of the senior pictures. We're starting with the class of winter 1935. You can see right off the bat a very diverse mix of boys and girls, a mix of poses, a mix of facial expressions, a mix of activity levels. Some folks who are very, very involved, and some who are less so. First names from other generations are always interesting to me as well. Names that have fallen out of favor. There are 2 Dorothys right here on this first page, and a Frances, a Lydia, Olivia, Irene, and Ada. You can see African American, you can see Mexican or Spanish descent, white as well. Quite a melting pot. There's a Clara or Clara. There's an Orville. A Rosalie. Emma. A Lucille. Clifford. Like the very front-facing, smiling poses here, contrasted with the very cool, looking off to the side kind of a pose that you have here. Some shots are more close up than others. I wonder how many different photographers were involved. There's a Truman. This is the end of the class of winter 35, and here's the first of the summer of 35. I find the handwriting, the fact that it's just, that it's here, that it's present, one of the most compelling bits of an old yearbook. Without the handwriting, it's just a historical snapshot. But with the handwriting, it becomes personal, it becomes alive in a way, doesn't it? These people's hands and pens, they were present for a moment here in this space, this same space that we find ourselves now. Decades later, we cross the same path for a brief moment. And we get to put their style of writing in the same place with their face, and we get a sense of them that we would not get without their writing. It makes all the difference when looking back at something like this, to me. This fellow has a great look, a serious look. He's got very penetrating eyes, I feel. I wonder what his path was like. More of the class of summer 35. Merle down here did not look particularly thrilled with being in front of the camera that day. Whereas Cleveland over here seemed to be pleased as punch. Adelina and Juanita, Betsy, Carola, Bonaparte. It's a fantastic name. Bonaparte Galindo. I think he has some artwork in this yearbook somewhere. Lillian and Marjorie, Clarence, Kenneth and Frank, another Dorothy. I wonder how many of these Dorothys were named after The Wizard of Oz came out. Vera and Iona, Martha. Here's a Toshiko Miyoshi, so that we can see that the ethnic melting pot extends to Japanese immigrant families as well. There's a Tanaka. Zelma Donald and May and Harry. A Mally. So far, I see a lot of familiar territory here. And this is the end of the summer 35 class. There's a Watanabe, Arthur and Ethel, and Ophelia. A short history, the class of 35. Now we see on this page that this high school contained grades 7th through 12th. Or I wonder if they considered the senior classes like a 13th grade. I wonder if this was a 6-year school or a 7-year school. I don't know whether the these 12th grade folks are the same people that we just looked at pictures of or not. But it appears that the only grades that get individual pictures with their names next to them are the seniors. Next we have organization. It'll be interesting to see how many of these groups are mirrored in the groups that I remember from my high school. Best wishes. That no one has yet attained a friend, Louise. And another nice piece of woodcut style art, the octagonal school. And I do believe all of these pieces of art were created by students at this school. We have the student body government, something called the Girls' League Cabinet, the Jordan Senior Knight Officers, and the Jordan Junior Knight Officers. And all these groups have faculty sponsors. The World Friendship Club, the Scholarship Society, Latin Club. This this is pretty neat. There were no Latin classes in my high school. Spanish club, literary club, stamp club. I have to laugh just a little bit at the stamp club here, and I'm not laughing at them. I was in stamp club in middle school, and I don't remember any girls in the stamp club. That's an interesting difference right there. The foreman's club, the math club, looks like a fairly sizable math club, which is good. We have horticulture and stage crew, home economics club, prize winners, cosmetology. Now there's a big one. The cosmetology department is one of the most popular as well as practical departments in the school. J Club officers, Jordan Lady officers, Chef Club. Then we move on to activities. Dear Joe, it's been great knowing you. I wish you loads of happiness and success in the future. That might be Anne. Don't you love the penmanship? People don't write like this anymore. Activities. Lots of luck from Emily. Another piece of art called In Days of Old, showing the seating arrangement from a very old, perhaps a one-room schoolhouse. A pal. A pal from someone named Sarah, I believe. And then it says, to the best hero in my stories. Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? And this is signed on the reporter staff, the Joe High printers and Joe High staff page. I wonder if Sarah was a writer, and I wonder if the student body president who owned this book inspired characters in her stories. Let's turn this around a little bit and see if we can read this one a little better. Joe, I'm wishing you, Jordan's student body president, one of its finest nights and a friend of mine, a lot of success in his future years. looks like here we have a rundown of the various plays that the drama classes presented during the academic year, as well as some summaries, perhaps, of the plot. The Nervous Wreck and Skidding. Rose of the Danube. Girls' Glee and Boys' Glee and Band and Orchestra. Ah. Look at the instruments. David Starr Jordan Band. It has on the bass drum there in the center, with the tubas in the background. Reminds me a little of the play, the music. A rundown of the music department. Literary. Here's a piece of artwork called Americanization. This might be, to me, the most interesting piece in the book, because I think there's a lot going on here, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because I'm not a historian or a sociologist, but this is a very, you can see the different ethnicities represented here, and California was already quite the melting pot. You know, by 1935, the state had only been a state for 85 years. And so the Californios, the people of Spanish and Mexican descent, and the American Indian population were already in place. And then people moving west started mixing in with that and creating quite a mix. I think that's represented just here in this simple graphic. I can only imagine there were quite a few struggles and tensions related to that changing demographic over the decades. And a ton of inscriptions on these two pages in particular. Good luck. Here's another friend who will miss that cute little soup strainer. Here's another friend who will miss that, quote, cute little soup strainer. It really makes you wonder what some of these references are all about. Lots of luck to a nice boy, hoping you find success in everything you do. A friend, Lucy. Joe, remember me in your hours of reflection. A friend who will miss you. Gaspar. The names are fantastic. Wishing you all the luck in the world. Lots of luck to a swell guy. here's a short history of the school. I won't read it word for word, but some of the main interesting points from this is that the school was originally built as a middle school to serve the Watts and Graham school districts. But in 1926, the town of Watts was annexed to Los Angeles, and it became a neighborhood of Los Angeles. And then the school was converted into a high school by the city of Los Angeles. And we also learn in this passage that the reason they were using tents, we saw the picture at the beginning of the book, and the reason they were rebuilding that administration building is that the original one was destroyed in an earthquake in March of 1933. So these students had some very interesting challenges at the beginning of their senior year in high school. And the school was named after a scientist, David Starr Jordan, who was at that time the president of Stanford University. Some more history of the school, an essay called The Progress of Education. This section of the yearbook is a collection of either poems or short essays written by students, I believe. This one called Jimmy the Gent caught my eye right away because it begins with a I know James Cagney. I've seen some of his movies, and it's a very interesting. Some of the things that you read that were written from this era, just it's hard to get your mind around the context sometimes. Let's see what this person has written about James Cagney in this piece called Jimmy the Gent. James Cagney. The reason why women like to be slapped around. Obviously, that was the line that got my attention because, I had to keep reading because I had to ask myself what possible context could we be talking about where this sentence is okay, right? So let's read on and see if this begins to make sense. And I'm not guaranteeing that it will, and this is a girl writing this, by the way. And yet he's so different off the screen. Believe it or not, but in real life, he never hits a woman, never wears a cap, and detests apple pie. Those three things are, it's confounding that these three things show up in the same sentence as counterexamples to the argument, right? If his charm lies in his looks, then the old belief about the fairer sex preferring tall, handsome men is the bunk. The irresistible Jimmy is only 5 feet 6 inches tall, has freckles, and dark brown eyes. He likes to laugh, is always nicknaming his friends, and takes delight in annoying both his friends and enemies. He's the kind of man you simply can't please, and I know. You see, my cousin works for a woman whom James Cagney often visits. If my cousin cooks steak, he wants chops, and if she serves pie, he wants cake. One day she was baking apple pie. Wandering by the kitchen, Jimmy demanded lemon. Lemon it was then, but when he turned that down, my cousin told him to eat apple pie or none at all. He did, too, and quite humbly, off a kitchen table. He rewarded her quite nobly with a package of gum. He always has a supply of gum on hand. He is under contract with Warner Brothers, and he has never starred in the pictures of any other studio. Written by Dorothy Brown, class of the summer of '39. This is such an odd little piece, I think. I can only assume that perhaps Dorothy was a fan and felt a need to point out the differences between his on-screen persona and the real-life person. Perhaps people confused the two back in those days. But this opening sentence is quite an attention grabber. More essays and poems. And I think the resolution here is sharp enough that if you are watching on a computer and pause the video, you can probably read all of these if you'd like to take a peek back into the work of all of these kids. And I encourage you to do that. Athletics, of course. Joe, I think you're the best guy I've ever met in this school. I am hoping you're a great success. I guess as student body president, we would assume Joe would be pretty well connected with a lot of friends. And the yearbook seems to bear that out. First secondary school is the artwork here. I think we have a little piece about someone who graduated Jordan in 1927 and his accomplishments. We have the varsity football team. We have something called lightweight football. I assume this would be like the the junior varsity of today, complete with plenty of signatures. Varsity basketball and B basketball and C basketball. And D basketball. The basketball program was pretty deep, it looks like, although it doesn't look like they sprang for uniforms too much down at the D level. Let's check that 1 second. Yeah, B and C all look the same. Okay. We have baseball, of course. We have varsity track. We can see that the track wasn't just running, but also some of the other track and field events like shot put. That's what's happening here. B track. C track. The Girls Athletic Association. Then something called Varieties. Let's see what these are. Remember me as a friend. Modern School is the artwork here. So here we have a calendar of the notable events of this academic year. And the very first entry from September 11th, 1934 says, students begin school in tents. So we're back to the tent concept from the picture at the beginning of the yearbook. And the very next day they write, Scrubs disappointed in not finding elevator and swimming pool. Lots of fun little inside references to school life at Jordan, I assume. Continue with a year's worth of interesting events. There's a lot of sporting event results listed in this calendar. I like this listing from March 1st of 1935 that says, Talking Pictures make their debut at Jordan. Grace Moore stars in One Night of Love. So I assume they had a screen or a gymnasium or an auditorium where they showed movies, and this must have been the first talking picture they showed at the school. And of course the calendar culminates on June 20th, 1935. The almighty seniors graduate tonight. Woe is them. And then, of course, we have advertising. I think even modern day yearbooks have a section of advertising from local businesses. And I love advertising just as much as any other thing from this era, because you catch a glimpse of the interesting use of language. Here's Horowitz department store. We sell everything but the eats. The Advertiser Review. Trade with the advertiser, whose patronage makes it possible for the Jordan High News to be published in a community paper. Thomas Stevens here does radio, hardware, and plumbing. Fred May's Barbershop. Many thanks for the high percent of patronage from the Jordan High School student body. Some candid and some casual posed photographs. Kind of a montage here. Some of these are so classic 30s. The dress and the hair. To a swell president and friend. Here's a Ford dealer. You can see a few of the ads also contain what was the equivalent of a phone number from back in those days. I think the format here had to do with switchboards. Sawaya's had up-to-date apparel for high school boys and girls. Learn to earn at Sawyer School. Sawyer School of Business clearly has the most professional-looking ad. Day school and night school. The Farmers and Merchants Bank in Watts. The Safeway store. Compliments of Arden Milk. To the best president Jordan ever had. This Joe fellow was clearly a popular fellow. Wishing you lots of luck in the future. To a good-looking student body prez, a friend. Wishing you luck and happiness. A pal I hope to see in the big leagues. Joe must have been on the baseball team. We have a couple of shoe store ads here, a jeweler, a bakery. Compliments of Broadway Knitting Mills Limited, manufacturers of sweaters and bathing suits. Sweaters, bathing suits. I guess they've got the extremes covered, don't they? Jerry J's got the perfect fitting sweater with perma-fit seam. E.F. Smith Market has the meats and the groceries and the delicatessen and the vegetables. Shop at the best, buy at the best. Joe, from June 21st, 1935. It sure has been a pleasure knowing, and I shall never forget the times we used to have. Let's hope we can be friends from now on. Don't know why you're mad. And he originally wrote sorry, but then crossed it out and replaced it with mad. But I hope it ain't anymore. Wonder what was going on here. Wish you all the luck in the world. The best kid in Jordan. Best wishes for the future. Lots of luck to our student body. Prez. To a good shortstop, but not good enough to defeat me. I love the good-spirited competition that you see here. Hi, palsy walsy. Don't forget the times I stepped on your toes at KP Hall. Good luck from a pal. Looks like the back of this back of the book is where the bulk of the signatures are. Again, a lot of similarities in what people would say, which tends to mean my eye is automatically drawn to the people who have a little more to say, because I want to see what was on their mind in this moment, right? In this kind of very transitional period. I remember being very excited and scared around the time of my high school graduation, because you went from 12 years that were relatively predictable to the next big chapter, right? I'll never forget how hard I had to work to win over you in art period 4B. You sure gave me competition. I surely am sorry that a handsome guy and a swell kid also, like you, is graduating. A happy vacation. We've got best wishes here and a little artwork. Always nice when they get a little artistic. Looks like we have some poetry here. And it's got a word in it I'm not sure how to pronounce. Fluver? Fluver? I assume it's a slang term for an automobile of some sort. I meant to look this up, but I forgot. Joe didn't listen, look, or stop. They towed his fluver to the shop. It didn't take a week or two to make the car look good as new. But though they hunted high and low, they found no extra parts for Joe. From your pal always, Harry Ritchie. Gobs of luck. Lots of luck to a senior. Best wishes to a swell guy. What an intersection this is, right? All of these people that Joe, our hero Joe, had come in contact with over the last 6 years, all making like a final deposit of good wishes in the likely, frankly, the likely eventuality that many of them would not see each other again after this day. Best wishes to the best student body president we have had. It's a lot of high praise in these inscriptions. I get a little lost in these sometimes, I have to admit. And I'm hopefully making sure that you can see all of the pages, so if you want to study them a little more closely. Oh, goodness. I like candy. I like pie. I would like to hit you in the eye. From a pal. Best of luck to the best shortstop Jordan ever had. And I hope you reach the top. Remember me in the bungalow school. I wish I knew what that referred to. Look at this one here in the corner for a moment. Just a little girl who thinks you're okay. Dorothy Brown. what do you know? It's Dorothy Brown. Dorothy Brown wrote the essay about Jimmy Cagney that we read earlier. Her graduating class meant that she was, I think, an 8th grader or so when Joe was graduating. I find myself wishing sometimes she was a little bit older, like a year or two behind Joe. It's fun to think about what the relationship might have been. Just a little girl who thinks you're okay. There's something deceptively reductive about this comment. If she was closer to Joe's age, it would be tempting to think, or to wonder at least, whether, Joe always had her heart, but she never told him. Maybe she watched from a distance while Joe was dating the homecoming queen or whatever they had back in those days, and she just wished he would notice her. Spent 4 or 6 years watching him just be a little bit out of reach, And the flip side could have been true as well. Maybe Joe always wished he had the courage to ask her out. He was so popular, had so many friends, but still had perhaps a blind spot. And that blind spot was that he could not ever figure out how to talk to the one person that fascinated him the most. It's fun when just a small throwaway line like this can inspire the imagination in that way. And that brings us to the back cover, which is the same as the front. So if you wanted to play a little game, and if hopefully I gave you a good enough view of all of these pages, you can always go back and figure out who the owner of this yearbook was. We know he was the student body president, and we know his first name was Joe. So, if you'd like to do that as a challenge, you might want to stop the video now, but for those who just want, for those folks who read the last page of a novel first, let's go find Joe. Meet Joe, everybody. This is Joseph Papaleo. He was the student body president and the owner of this yearbook and the recipient of all of this goodwill and these best wishes on the day of his graduation. And he, like all of the people we've seen in this senior class, was born a century ago. And that is perhaps the most compelling thing to me about visiting a collection like this, is that one has to wonder how all of these journeys played out, right? Because in certainly nearly all, if not all of these cases, the journeys have come to an end by now. So all of the successes and the failures, all of the victories, all of the humble lives and the heroic lives and everything in between has all played out and run its course. The marks that these people have made on history, on the world, on the people close to them, and maybe in some rare cases the people far away who never even knew them personally. All of that has played out. All the stories are written. And hopefully, not forgotten. But certainly unknown to us. So we sit and observe and look at pictures and handwriting and notes of good wishes and wonder. We wonder what happened, and we hope. Well, we hope. We hope everybody did okay. These folks went on to grow up in turbulent times in this country, so I guess what we can hope, perhaps, is that they all worked to help make things a little bit better, and that hopefully they were all a part, whether a big part or a small part, but a part of solutions to things, rather than parts of problems. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next video, okay? Bye-bye.